Okay, so when you get to the dark night of the soul and you overcome it, what do you get to? You get to a kind of revelation. Another word for this is an apotheosis. So that's a term that Campbell uses sometimes for this stage of the journey. And it means becoming one with a god. That's what they'd say in classic Greek stories of, the hero has overcome their journey and now, like Hercules or somebody like that, becomes a god. That's one way to do it in these mythological stories. But Campbell's ideas of an apotheosis can be any kind of profound revelation, some big, glorious, transcendent, triumphant moment where they get new knowledge or something very powerfully magical or some other kind of victory. And this kind of revelation is what really ultimately, at the end of the day, makes them a hero. They fought through all the trials and struggles to end up at this point, and now they're getting like this badge of authority that is like, yes, they earned this stuff. They ended up at the final triumphant moment. This gives the hero the power to change the world for the better. And it makes the hero a special kind of person, like a saint or someone who can do miracles or some sort of magical person, some kind of magical wizard or some kind of healer or shaman, things like that. The hero now has the power to heal the old world and to bring this sort of magic or life back into it. And the hero are the guardian of that magic and life now. They have that power within them. Whereas before they were going out to look for it, now they found it and they have it. Now, there's some very significant variations which we commonly see on the idea of the apotheosis. So I'm going to talk about the three big forms that it usually takes. And Campbell talks about all of them. Again, you don't have to do them all. A lot of stories just have one. But you can have more than one in some stories if you want to, because you can play around with all these ideas and symbols. Okay, so here's one for you. Union with the goddess. The hero's revelation is meeting a transcendent goddess or other powerful female figure. The hero falls in love with the goddess and the goddess falls in love with the hero. Or the hero just meets the goddess briefly and the goddess, whispers in the hero's ear the secrets of the universe, something like that. This very big, powerful moment of, the goddess knows what's going on and gives you the answers. And gives you this power, this magic, this sort of divine energy, this authority. Now, Campbell tends to talk most about male heroes. And so that's why for him, the goddess is such a powerful symbol, because for him, the goddess is how a male hero would approach the universe and encounter the universe and have victory over the universe. Falling in love with the goddess, or the goddess just granting the hero a blessing, is a symbol of like the whole universe and all its magical power. And I think, when we're in love, we can feel like our relationships are like that, right? They're giving us this revelation, this important understanding of everything. Now, interestingly, Campbell does say that, you can have female heroes as well. And a lot of our stories have these female protagonists, so I think we would want to have female heroes. But Campbell, and this is one of the weaknesses of his work, he doesn't really go into that so much. He just sort of very distantly acknowledges it as a possibility, but focuses a lot more on male heroes. Now, to be fair, in the mythology, this sort of hero character is more often male than female, especially in cultures where they're dominated by those ideas of men being the ones to go out and do things. But there can be female heroes too. Campbell says that, or argues that in a lot of these cultures, these mythological cultures, men need something to do, whereas women just are. Women are, the givers of life. They are associated with birth and all that. So they're already connected to sort of these ideas of the universe in these particularly ancient cultures. Maybe we want to draw that into question and say, hey, the women need something to do too. Just food for thought to think about. But I would say if you have a female hero, then what you probably have is a union with the god. And I do think we see some stories where heroine, female hero, meets a very powerful male figure who kind of teaches her something important. Just like with the anima and the animus, the goddess, or in some cases the god, could show up as a dangerous tempter. There are a lot of stories where the hero meets a goddess, but she turns out to be sort of a seductress, an evil opponent that he has to overcome. So he does experience a revelation from this, but he kind of has to fight and to defeat her to achieve that revelation. Okay, but that's just one of the kinds of revelations you can have. Another is, yes. Just because a goddess is frightening doesn't necessarily mean she's not worshipped. But the Hindu goddess Durga or Kali is a goddess of destruction. But she's very much beloved, even though she is associated with, floods and death and things like that. She is still considered very lovely and powerful. And like we said with Jung, the anima, both good and bad, are kind of the same thing. Okay, the kind of revelation you can have. Atonement with the father. So this is where the hero encounters a figure who evokes kind of the feeling of a father, usually a male in kind of a position of authority and strength. So the hero feels like this character is kind of like a father figure, even if it's not necessarily super clear whether the character is actually, related to this person or not. But this is, a person in a position of authority that you want to win the approval of, usually male. And there are a couple of different responses to meeting an authority father-like figure at the end of your journey. You could oppose your father and try to overthrow him. You could try to defeat him and, show that you were the stronger one. And Campbell argues that a lot of this comes from ancient cultures and family relationships, that if children do have some sort of rivalry with their fathers, seeing their mothers as maybe the source of, life, but their fathers as the source of authority and career type stuff, and, going out into the world and all the stuff that is not so much at home, but more thinking about the future and who do you want to be as a person? Do you want to be your father? Do you want to be like your father? Do you want to be different from your father? Lots of different stories go into these themes, and a lot of different heroes have to wrestle with them. So like I said, one response is to overthrow the father. But maybe the most powerful thing is to make peace with the father after having tension with him. So you and your father were rivals, but now you work things out and you make things good again. And this could also be a character, like I said, who sort of resembles a father. You meet this great leader, you meet the king, and you make peace with the king, whereas before you were in conflict, something like that. Or the king sent you on a quest, and then you achieve it, and he says, "Well done, person who is sort of like my son," and you feel very good about that. And either way, sort of the ultimate goal is to become the father. So the father is kind of the symbol of adulthood, and the hero needs to achieve that power and authority of the father. The hero is trying to kind of grow up and become a fully mature, fully adult person. And so either by reconciling with your father, which is what atonement means, kind of a reconciliation, either by reconciling with your father or defeating your father, you prove yourself worthy to have the authority of your father. And that's pretty interesting. And there's a very famous example in Star Wars where Luke kind of does both. He defeats his father by reconciling with the father. And I don't know if you've heard, but his father is Darth Vader. Sorry, spoilers for anyone who hadn't heard. But it's quite the journey for Luke, because he has this image of his father as this great hero, and part of this whole journey that he wants to go on. But then he finds out that his father is actually the villain. His father is actually this tyrant figure, this monster, leader type figure whose authority he's turned to evil. So Luke has to deal with that and figure out what kind of response he wants to do to that. And is he going to be like his father or different from his father? The movies play around with the thought that he might go to the dark side a little bit because he gets his hand chopped off and now he's sort of more like Darth Vader than he was before. They're playing around with all this. But ultimately, Luke chooses not to use his anger. And in that way, he becomes very different than his father. And he becomes not like Darth Vader. And that gives it gives Darth Vader an opening to become more like Luke and choose to act against his evil master, the Emperor. And so then Luke and his father are reconciled, and Darth Vader takes his mask off and shows his human face to Luke for the first time. He recognizes that his father is ultimately human, and they can reconcile at the end. So that's a classic example. And then, yeah, Luke doesn't really take on the authority of the Empire because that was a bad thing, but Luke does take on the authority in the sense of becoming a Jedi and a leader for the future. So that's all pretty interesting. And yeah, now you don't have to have the whole "I am your father" moment in order to do this type of thing. You could just have a big, strong dude guy. You could just have King Arthur or something like that for the, quote, father. Okay. This big form of revelation is what, revelation, I should say, is what Campbell calls the elixir. So elixir, what's that word mean? It's kind of like a magic potion, traditionally. So the elixir is Campbell's name for any kind of magical gift or magical artifact. So at the end of their journey, the hero is given a gift. Sometimes it's a potion, sometimes it's something else like a magic item, a tool they can use, an invisibility cloak, something like that. But it has to come at the end of the journey. And this magic item has the power to help their world. It will, bring life back to the desert, or it will save someone, or can be used to solve a problem, something like that, or it literally gives you immortality. Any of those things could apply. And so the hero gets this gift so that they can bring back to their world. And that is another symbol. So we're all sort of talking about all of these are different symbols for kind of the potential, the growth that you can achieve through your journey, and the ultimate victory you have over yourself and over the world. And so the elixir is a symbol of that kind of energy, basically. That's why it's so often a potion of immortality, because what is immortality? It's life, the hero's trying to bring life to the world. And let's see. And sometimes though, the hero doesn't get given the gift. The hero steals the gift instead. And the hero has to flee, actually. The hero steals the magic potion or the magic artifact and has to run back home. And I think a really classic example of this is Prometheus. And he's one who kind of shows us maybe the relationship between tricksters and heroes, because he is very much thought of as a hero as well as kind of being a trickster. Prometheus has to run back home to safety. With his elixir being, of course, fire. And this fire has the power to change the world. It has the power to make human lives better. So his is just kind of the tail end of the myth there, but you can tell that he's gone on a journey and brought something back. And he suffered for it, and some heroes do. But I think the elixir is ultimately a symbol of the wisdom you've gained on your journey. Okay, and like I've kind of implied here, the hero must return home. The hero crosses back over into the ordinary world. This could be a triumphant kind of crossing, or, like I said, a flight running from your enemies. But because of their revelation, the hero is now able to bring this wisdom or this holiness or this magic power back into the world, back to places where it wasn't before. And so this is what the journey is all about, is becoming the kind of person who has the power to change the world. Although some heroes actually don't want to come back home, and maybe you were raring to leave, or maybe you discovered why you wanted to be out in the land of adventure in the first place. But ultimately, the heroes have to come back home. The Buddha, I might have said, no, that was the other class, didn't want to teach enlightenment to people. because he didn't think it could be taught. But the gods got together to persuade him, and they said, you have to teach this. It's important. So in the end, you do have to go back home. Okay, we'll continue this in the next video.